Hey, this is Lee. All right, so in a few of my other tutorials, I've taken a look at, let me jump to the composition here, how to create, first of all, this footage here that was shot, how to separate this tree using a roto brush from the background. That way, when the saucer comes in, you see how it's coming in behind the tree there? We can create that effect. And then also the bird here is green screen footage that I pulled from YouTube. The link is down below. And we put the bird in there, use green screen effect to key out the green screen, place the bird in. But what I want it to do is I want it to stay with the tree, of course, because the bird is sitting on the tree. So we track the tree and then we apply that information to the bird so that the bird stays there. So those two things I have covered in other tutorials. We are going to jump in and take a look at this right here. So this effect right here of the bird being evaporated is made up of about 3 different effects. First of all, the beam that comes down, you see that there. Then the green effect, the evaporation effect that takes over the bird. And then there is a third effect of the bird, the particles of the bird being pulled into the ship. So right now I'm going to take a look at this beam and recreating this beam. So I'm going to jump in and get started. So I'm going to go up to composition, new composition, and we're going to label this vertical green lines. And we're going to do 1920 by 1080 based on the original footage frames per second. We're going to go with 23976. I'll just set this up for 10 seconds long and hit OK on that. Now, the first layer that I'm going to drop in here is I'm going to create a new solid layer, new solid, and I'm going to change this green right here. I'm going to punch in the hexadecimal of 4DFF55, and that's the green color I want. I'm going to hit OK on that. And I'm going to change the size of this just slightly to 700 by 1080, and we're going to label this green solid and hit OK. So we're going to work with that. We're going to add in one more solid real quick. Go to layer, new, solid, and this is just going to be our vertical lines. And let's set this to comp size, and then we'll change this to a black solid, hit OK. And now that's on top. With the vertical lines, we're going to add in the fractal noise effect. So we're going to jump up here, effect, noise, and grain, and go to fractal noise. I'm going to make a few changes to this. We'll leave it at basic and soft linear. We're going to increase the contrast up to about 235, and we'll bring up the brightness to about 25. And then I'm going to jump down here into the transform property so that we can scale this quite a bit. Uncheck uniform scaling. And I'm going to bring up our scale width just a little bit to 105, but then we're going to greatly increase the scale height to 2100. I'm going to animate 2 properties on this. The first, I'm going to jump into the subsettings here, and we're going to look at the sub offset right here. Make sure your timeline indicator is at the very beginning. We're going to set our first keyframe for that sub offset, and now I'll hit the U key on that layer so I can see that. I'm going to drop down the Y value on this property to a negative 10,000. And then jump to the very end of the composition and bring that all the way up to 10,000. And what that does is creates quite a bit of movement in that effect. And now we're going to animate one more property. The evolution here, again, need to be back at the beginning of the timeline. Set a keyframe for evolution. We're going to start at 0x or 0 rotations and jump to the end of it. And then we'll add in 10 full rotations, 10 right there on that 0x. give us a little bit more movement. All right, now let's take a look at our green solid. What we want to do is we want to blend this green solid into this effect. To do that, I'm going to use track matte, and I'm going to use the luminance values on this. So the luminance would be the white and the black values. So I'm going to jump down here to track matte on the green solid and go to lumen matte, the vertical lines. And so there you can see that basically where the white is, the green is replacing it. I'm going to add one more effect. It's going to be to the green solid, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not real sure where this effect is located. So I'm going to go over here to effects and presets, and I'm going to search it for roughen edges, and there it is. It's under stylize. So I'm going to grab that effect right there, and I'm going to drop it on the green solid. I'm going to make a few changes to this effect here. On the border, I'm going to bring that up to 95. On the sharpness, I'm going to drop that down to 0. And the fractal influence, we'll drop that to a -1. I'm going to bring the scale up to 280. And then we're going to stretch this to about 28. So I've zoomed in a little bit on our final piece here, and I'm taking a look at the beam effect here. I have a few more effects that we're going to add, but we're going to need to create another composition to do this. So again, let's go up to composition, new composition. We'll label this one evaporator field 1920 by 1080, 23976, and we'll go with 10 seconds on that one also. Hit OK. And this one's basically going to consist of a couple of solids also. So I'm going to jump back in to layer, new, solid, and we're going to add in that green color again. So we're going to go with 4DFF55 on that, hit OK. Comp size is great. And now we'll need one more solid again. Going to basically redo what we just did, layer, new, solid. Going to change that to black, hit OK. And we'll label this one fractal noise. And we're going to add that fractal noise in, go to effect, noise and grain, fractal noise. Of course, make some adjustments to this one. We're going to change the fractal type from basic to strings. And we're going to go from soft linear to spline right here on noise type. I'm going to bring the contrast to 60, and we're going to take a look at sub settings. The sub influence, we'll bring that to 99. And then the sub scaling, let's bring that to 100. And then we're going to animate this on the evolution. Timeline indicator at the very beginning of the composition, we'll set a keyframe for evolution right there. So I can see that. I'm now going to hit the U key on the keyboard. I'm going to drop to the very end of the composition, and we're going to do 5 full rotations on that. So we'll go to 0x now. We'll type in 5x, and it creates this look here. I'm going to add in one more effect to this fractal noise layer. Go up to Effect, and this is going to be under Channel, and we're going to go to Set Matte. We'll make a few adjustments here. On Take Matte from Layer, we're going to leave it as fractal noise, but we're going to change from source to masks and then use matte for it. Rather than alpha channel, we're going to do lightness. And now let's jump back to our green solid right there. And on the track matte, let's change that to alpha matte. To combine the evaporator field and the vertical green lines, we're going to start a new composition. Composition, new composition. Let's label this one beam. And we're going to go with those settings. We're going to start off with another solid layer, new solid. And we're going to change the color of this one this time to 003803, a little bit darker green. Hit OK on that. Hit OK. And we're going to go into our project tab here, and we're going to bring in the evaporator field composition and drop that on top. And now we're going to go to the dark green solid and select alpha matte on the track matte right there. And for the evaporator field comp, we're going to change the scale of it just a little bit. So select that, hit the S key for scale, bring that up. I'm going to deconstrain those two proportions right there. Go to the X value and type in 36. And now we'll bring in the vertical green lines and drop that on top. And I'm going to add a couple of effects to this. Select that and go up to Effect, and we'll go to Stylize, Roughen Edges right there. And we'll make some adjustments to it real quick. We're going to change that from Roughen to Cut. And let's bring that border up to 28. Let's bring the scale up to 102. And then on the stretch, we'll set it at a negative 5.6. Now I'm going to add one more effect, and we're going to go to Channel, Set Matte. We're going to select vertical green lines, and we're going to change that to masks. And we'll leave that on alpha channel, and then we're going to uncheck Stretch Matte to fit. Let's duplicate the evaporator field layer. Select it, Control D, Command D, and I'm going to drag that to the top. And with it above this vertical green lines, I'm going to select that layer, vertical green lines, and we're going to change that to alpha inverted. And now that's pretty much set. So now we want to add the beam effect into the composition. In an earlier tutorial, I tracked the position of the saucer. Let me scrub through to that point. This part of the saucer appears, and there's that little highlight right there. That was a good point for me to track using the point tracker. I have that information, that tracking information right here set to this saucer position track. I'll open that up real quick just to show you that information. And there it is right there, the position of that point. We're going to attach the beam to that so that it follows the saucer. And before I bring the beam in, I want to set my timeline indicator right here at 7 seconds where I want the beam to start, because that's the position of the flying saucer that I want the beam to track from. Now I'm going to jump up here, grab the beam, drop it in. We're going to need to scale it down. Bring that down to about 18 real quick, and then I'm going to deconstrain both of those and bring my X value down to 8. My Y value is at about 18. And then I'll position the beam so that it's right in there, tracking behind the bird, tracking behind the saucer. And I need to change the anchor point from being center of the beam to up here at the top. To do that, I'm going to grab the pan behind tool, grab that anchor point right there and drag it to the top. That allows me to adjust the scale there. And then also I'm going to transition this in using the linear wipe transition. So drop down here, Effect, Transition, Linear Wipe. Drop that on there. I want to change the wipe angle to 0. And we will animate the transition completion to bring the beam in. So I'm going to set the transition completion at 100%. We'll set a keyframe right there. That's where we want it. And then I'm going to hit the U key so I can see that keyframe. And I'm going to jump in about 3 frames. I'm just going to page down 1, 2, 3, 3 times. And then I'm going to bring that completion back to 0%. And it has affected that beam in. One other thing I want to do so that I can blend this into the background a little bit better, I'm going to change the blending mode from normal to add. There we go. And let's render that section out and take a look at it. All right. And one other thing I need to do is going to set this back at 7 seconds there. And I need to parent the beam now to the saucer. So what I'm going to do is come to the beam. I'm going to grab the pick whip right there under the parent and link column. And that I'm going to drag that to the saucer position track. And what that does is it tells the beam to follow the saucer. And we'll play that through, and you can see that wherever the flying saucer goes, that beam follows. All right, I am going to adjust just a little bit on the scale and bring that to 18 so that it stays behind the bird. There we go. So in the next tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at, of course, we've created the beam, we've hit the bird with it. So what we need to do now is create this field effect that engulfs the bird, evaporates the bird, and then we see the particles of the bird flying up into the saucer. So we'll work on that in the next tutorial. I hope this has been helpful. For more on After Effects and editing in Premiere, take a look at my other tutorials.